All right. Ready to go back to Maycomb.
Oh, absolutely.
That last chapter, chapter 15 of To Kill a Mockingbird. Wow. That was a close one at the jail, huh?
Really intense.
Feels like things are changing in chapter 16, though.
Yeah, you can definitely feel a shift.
But that tension, I don't know, it's like it's still hanging in the air.
It is. And of course, the trial is getting closer and closer.
It's like the calm before the storm.
That's a great way to put it. We see the characters kind of processing what happened and bracing themselves for what's next.
So much happened.
This chapter really lays the groundwork for the trial, too. Introduces some important people, and even reveals a few things that might make you think about Atticus's actions a bit differently.
Okay, well, let's start with Jem sneaking Scout back into the house.
Right.
After their little adventure.
Yeah.
And remember how Scout doesn't cry until she's safe in her bed? Have you ever felt that, like where the emotions hit you later after everything's calmed down?
Oh, absolutely. It's a completely normal reaction to trauma. In a way, it's like Scout finally feels safe enough to let go and process what happened.
Once she's in her own space.
Exactly. But that feeling of unease, it kind of carries over into the next morning, the breakfast scene.
Oh, hey.
You can really feel the tension. Jem's trying to act like everything's fine, just shoveling food into his mouth.
Yeah.
But everyone else obviously on edge. It's like they're all walking on eggshells, like one wrong word could just shatter everything.
Afraid to say anything.
And Aunt Alexandra. Oh, she is not happy about the kids sneaking out.
No.
Not one bit. For her, it's like they broke some unwritten rule. Like they violated the way things are supposed to be.
The way society works.
But you know what's interesting? Atticus is actually right glad his disgraces had come along.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, he might not approve of them sneaking out, but he understands something important happened at the jail. And he's not going to punish them for it.
So typical Atticus, right? Calm, understanding, even when there's danger.
Exactly.
But it makes you wonder, what was he really thinking and feeling that night?
I think deep down he was shaken, but he'd never show it, not in front of his kids. It has to be strong for them, for the whole community, really.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to another really important part of this chapter, the growing tension between Atticus and Aunt Alexandra.
Yeah, there are arguments about Calpurnia.
It's a clash of worldviews. Atticus treats Calpurnia with respect as an equal.
Yeah.
Aunt Alexandra, though, she's more worried about appearances. What will people think?
What's proper?
Right. What message do you think that sends to Jem and Scout?
I think it shows them that standing up for what you believe in is important, even when it goes against what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, even when it's hard, Atticus is teaching them that real courage isn't about fitting in, it's about doing what's right, no matter what.
No matter what.
And this theme of moral courage, it comes up again with that little detail about Mr. Underwood.
Mr. Underwood?
The newspaper editor. Remember Atticus said he despises Negroes?
Oh, right, great.
But he still protected Atticus at the jail.
That is strange.
Right, it makes you question that whole idea of good guys versus bad guys.
Like it's not so simple.
People are complicated. Mr. Underwood might be full of contradictions. But that night at the jail, he did the right thing.
Yeah, there's more to him than meets the eye.
And it's the same with Atticus's view of Mr. Cunningham.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about Mr. Cunningham having blind spots? It's
Yeah.
like he's saying even someone who could get caught up in a mob can still be reached, on a personal level.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
And there's hope there.
Yeah.
That even when people seem lost in their prejudices, there's a chance for them to change.
I like that.
But Jem doesn't quite agree.
No.
He's still young. He sees things more in black and white, good and bad.
Yeah.
And he can't reconcile Mr. Cunningham being part of the mob with him helping Atticus.
I can see that.
It's part of growing up, I think, starting to see the world in shades of gray.
Yeah, definitely. So the day of the trial arrives. Lee describes Maycomb as this, bustling place, almost like a festival.
Right, with crowds gathering, families having picnics on the courthouse square.
Yeah.
But there's also this underlying tension, this sense of anticipation,
It's like two different moods at the same time.
Exactly. And I think it highlights the divide in Maycomb society. For the white community, it's like a big event, a spectacle.
Entertain.
But for the black community, it's different. There's a somberness, a sense of dread.
A worry about what's to come.
Exactly.
And then we're introduced to Mr. Dolphus Raymond.
Oh, yeah.
What a character. Wealthy, comes from a good family,
Right.
but he chooses to live with the black community and pretends to be drunk all the time. Why do you think he does that?
Well, think about the social rules in Maycomb. A white man living openly with a black woman, having mixed-race children. It was unacceptable.
Yeah.
So Mr. Raymond creates this persona, this facade of being a drunk.
To give people a reason.
An excuse. It's as if he's saying, I'm not rejecting your world because I'm better than you. I'm doing it because I'm a drunkard.
That's so sad.
It is, in a way. He has to hide his true self to protect himself and his family.
It really makes you think about what people will do to avoid being judged.
And speaking of tough questions, Mr. Raymond's situation leads to this conversation between Jem and Scout about belonging, about identity.
Okay.
Jem says that mixed-race children, they don't belong anywhere.
Oh, wow.
They're rejected by both the white and black communities,
So they're kind of stuck in the middle.
forced to exist in this in-between space.
And it makes you think about how ridiculous those social categories are.
Absolutely. And then Jem starts thinking about their own family, the Finches,
Oh, really?
wondering if maybe somewhere way back they have some black ancestors.
Wow.
It's a question that unsettles both him and Scout,
Of course.
making them face the possibility that they could be subject to the same prejudice.
It's like Lee is using Jem to show how meaningless those racial categories are.
Exactly. It's not about blood or ancestry,
It's about power.
about control.
Yeah.
And this idea, questioning authority, challenging those social norms, it's going to become even more important as the trial unfolds.
Okay, so let's talk about the courthouse itself. Lee describes it as this mix of different architectural styles,
It's like a physical representation of Maycomb itself,
trying to hold on to the past and present at the same time.
struggling to reconcile the two.
And then inside, it's chaos.
Packed. Everyone wants to see the trial.
And that's when we have that moment with Reverend Sykes.
Oh, yes.
He offers Jem, Scout, and Dill a place in the colored balcony.
There's no room left downstairs.
Such a kind gesture.
It really shows Reverend Sykes' character. But it's also a stark reminder of the segregation in Maycomb.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It's woven into the fabric of their lives.
And it's important that the kids will be watching the trial from the colored balcony.
Right. They're literally getting a different view.
A different perspective.
Exactly. They'll be seeing things from the viewpoint of the black community, experiencing firsthand the weight of what's about to happen.
And from their seats in the balcony, Scout describes the scene.
Yeah.
The jury, mostly farmers, she says. Atticus, the other lawyers, and of course, Judge Taylor.
With his cigar.
Always with the cigar. What was your first impression of Judge Taylor?
I found him, intriguing. He seems informal, relaxed, chewing tobacco, putting his feet up.
Even dozing off?
Right. But you can tell he's a smart man. He really understands Maycomb and its people.
And he has a unique way of doing things.
Like with the Cunningham land dispute.
Oh, yeah.
He knows how to handle the quirks of Maycomb, how to make things right, considering how complicated their world is.
It's like he's saying, I get these people, I know how they think.
Exactly. And that gives him a kind of authority you wouldn't expect.
Not your typical by-the-book judge.
More like a folk hero, almost. Dispense justice with a side of wisdom.
But before the trial starts, there's that moment where Scout overhears the Idlers Club talking about Atticus.
Yes. And we learn something surprising.
Atticus didn't volunteer to defend Tom Robinson.
He was appointed.
Changes things, doesn't it?
Completely. It adds a whole new layer to Atticus's actions.
It's not about glory for him. He's doing it because it's his duty,
because it's the right thing to do.
even though it makes him an outsider in his own town.
And, the reactions from the Idlers Club?
Yeah.
Not exactly a glowing endorsement of Maycomb's morals, are they?
Their disapproval, their casual racism, it just shows how deep that prejudice runs.
Atticus isn't just fighting for Tom Robinson's freedom.
He's fighting against the ignorance of his own community,
It makes his task that much harder.
and his courage that much greater.
It's a real turning point, isn't it?
It feels like we're on the edge of something big.
All this buildup, all these expectations.
And Jem, Scout, and Dill up in that colored balcony, it makes you wonder how they're seeing all of this. What do you think? Will this whole experience change how they view Maycomb?
I think it's going to be eye-opening, especially for Scout. They're getting exposed to a side of Maycomb they haven't really seen before.
And talking about seeing things differently, I keep thinking about that moment where Scout describes the courtroom from their viewpoint. The jury, she says, they're mostly farmers. And then there's Atticus, the other lawyers,
Yeah.
and Judge Taylor, of course.
Oh, Judge Taylor.
Never without his cigar.
It's striking, isn't it, how Lee contrasts this serious situation with Judge Taylor's relaxed demeanor.
Yeah, he seems so casual. Chewing tobacco, feet up.
Even dozing off sometimes.
But we know there's more to him than that.
Oh, absolutely. Sharp mind under that laid-back facade.
Like a chess player,
Yeah.
always thinking a few steps ahead.
Exactly. I remember that story about the Cunninghams and the Cunninghams.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
He knows how to handle Maycom, how to make things right even when things are complicated.
Like he's saying, I know these people. I know how they work.
He has this authority that comes from understanding.
Not your typical judge at all.
More like a wise old sage.
Dispenses justice with a folksy charm.
And don't forget the witnesses sitting there, backs to the kids,
Yeah.
adding to the suspense. We know this trial is going to be a turning point, but how it all plays out, wow, that's the question, isn't it?
We're all waiting to see what happens.
Holding our breath.
Earlier, you mentioned Mr. Raymond.
Yeah.
You know, the way he chooses to live.
Oh, yes.
It brings up some difficult questions, doesn't it? What are some of the things you're grappling with as you think about his character?
On the one hand, I admire him, rejecting all that hypocrisy in Maycom.
Standing up for what he believes in.
He's willing to be an outcast, to live a life that's true to himself. But then there's the other side of it.
Yeah?
What about his kids?
It must be hard for them.
By pretending to be drunk, he's feeding into a harmful stereotype, giving people an excuse to dismiss him, dismiss his choices.
It's like he's saying, the only reason I do this is because I'm messed up, not because I believe in racial equality.
It makes you wonder if he's helping or hurting the cause.
Yeah, is he challenging the system or just playing along with it?
It's complicated. There's no easy answer.
That's what makes him so interesting.
He forces you to think about the cost of challenging the status quo, the compromises people make.
The sacrifices. It's something we still grapple with today, right?
Yeah.
How do you fight for what you believe in without becoming the thing you're fighting against?
It's a question worth thinking about.
It is, and it brings us back to this idea of moral courage that we keep seeing in the chapter. Atticus is facing a similar dilemma, isn't he?
He is, standing up for what's right, even when it makes him unpopular.
And remember, we learned he didn't even choose this case,
He was assigned to it.
which makes his decision even more courageous.
He's not doing it for recognition or praise,
Just because he believes everyone deserves a fair trial.
regardless of their race.
Powerful message, especially in Maycom, with all its prejudice.
He's willing to risk his reputation, his place in the community. He's a man of principle.
It makes you think about what was going through his mind when he made that decision.
Knowing how people would react.
But he didn't hesitate.
He knew it was the right thing to do.
That's Atticus. And you can't talk about moral courage without mentioning that scene with the Idlers Club.
Oh, yes.
When Scout overhears them talking about Atticus defending Tom Robinson.
Their reactions, wow.
Not exactly supportive, are they?
Their disapproval, their casual racism. It just shows how ingrained that prejudice is.
It's everywhere.
Atticus is fighting a battle on two fronts.
In the courtroom and in his own community.
He's fighting for Tom Robinson's freedom, but also against the ignorance around him.
Makes his task seem impossible.
But his courage, it shines even brighter.
So the courtroom's filling up, the trial's about to begin, and Jem, Scout, and Dill, they're stuck without seats.
Right.
Remember where they end up.
The colored balcony.
Reverend Sykes takes them in.
Such a kind gesture. But it also highlights the reality of segregation in Maycom.
It's everywhere.
It's like a wall separating people.
And the kids, they're right there in the middle of it.
Watching it all unfold from this unique perspective.
I keep thinking about that image. The children, symbols of innocence and hope.
Finding a place in a space reserved for those considered lesser by society.
Is powerful.
And from there, they'll witness this whole trial, see all the complexities, all the injustices.
What do you think? How will this change their view of the world?
Profoundly, I think. They're being shown a side of things they've never seen before.
Like a glimpse behind the curtain.
Seeing the world through the eyes of those who are marginalized.
And, you know, we experience the trial through their eyes, too, as readers.
We do. We feel the weight of the injustice, but also the hope for something better.
It makes you think about why Lee chose to place the children in the colored balcony.
Yes.
Is she saying that to truly understand things, you have to step outside your own world, see things from a different angle?
It's a powerful message.
Especially in today's world.
Where empathy and understanding are more crucial than ever.
So we've talked about the tension in the Finch family, the community's reaction to Atticus defending Tom Robinson, and we've met some fascinating characters.
Mr. Dolphus Raymond, Judge Taylor.
We've wrestled with these big questions about prejudice, about justice, about what it means to have moral courage.
And we followed the children as they enter this world that's much more complicated than they realize.
But this is just the start. The stage is set. The trial is about to begin. What are you most looking forward to as we move into this next part of the story?
I'm really drawn to the contrast between the children's innocence and the gravity of what they're about to witness.
They're so young, so hopeful.
And they're about to face the harsh realities of prejudice and injustice.
It's heartbreaking in a way.
You know their innocence will be lost.
But there's also hope.
That their goodness will find a way through.
That's what keeps us reading, right? That hope.
The belief that even in the face of darkness, compassion and understanding can win.
It's like we're holding our breath, waiting for something to happen.
We've seen how tense things are in Maycomb. We know how much is riding on this trial.
And now we're finally going to see the trial itself. What do you think is at stake here? I mean, obviously it's about Tom Robinson's life.
Right.
But it feels like it's about more than that.
I think you're right. It's about the very soul of Maycomb.
Wow.
Will justice prevail or will prejudice win? It's going to force everyone, even the reader, to confront their own sense of right and wrong.
And Jem, Scout, and Dill watching from the colored balcony. It makes you wonder what's going through their minds.
How they're making sense of it all.
The way they're placed up there in the balcony, it's like it gives them a different perspective, literally. Lee's suggesting that sometimes you need to see things from a different angle to really understand. What do you think about that choice, especially in a place like Maycomb with its strict social rules?
It's brilliant. By placing the children with the Black community, Lee is challenging the idea of white superiority.
Yeah.
She's making us, the readers, see how absurd it is to separate people based on skin color. And she's doing it through the eyes of these children who see the world with such honesty.
Not blinded by prejudice yet.
Exactly. They haven't learned to ignore the injustice.
Their innocence makes it even more powerful when they recognize how wrong things are.
That's what makes this story so impactful. It reminds us that justice should be about fairness, recognizing that everyone has value no matter their race or their social status.
It's a basic human right.
And as we follow Scout, Jem, and Dill through this trial, we're invited to rediscover that sense of right and wrong.
That belief in a just world.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy, though.
No, it's going to be a difficult journey, full of challenges and sadness.
But ultimately, I think it's going to be a journey of growth for them and for us as readers.
I agree. And I think Atticus's words are a good guide for us here. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, he said.
Right.
Until you climb into his skin and walk around in it.
It's a powerful reminder to try to see the world through other people's eyes, to empathize, to understand. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Chapter 16 of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Wow, what a chapter.
We saw the aftermath of that mob scene, the growing tension in the Finch family. We met some new and interesting characters.
Mr. Dolphus Raymond, Judge Taylor.
We've talked about prejudice, justice, and moral courage.
Big questions.
And we've witnessed these children entering a world that's far more complex than they imagined. But as we move forward, I think it's worth keeping these questions in mind. How will the trial unfold?
What role will the children play in all of this?
And what will the verdict tell us about the true heart of Maycomb?
It's going to be fascinating to see.
It is. Until next time, keep reading and keep thinking.